The morning of June 23, 1965, dawned hot and humid over Houston, Texas, the air thick with the promise of another sweltering summer day. In the Montrose neighborhood, a quiet unease settled over 1815 Driscoll Street. The modest middle-class home stood silent, its curtains drawn tightly against the rising sun. Inside, an eerie stillness permeated the air, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a neighborhood dog. Houston police officers Charles Bullock and L.M. Barter arrived at the residence for a welfare check, prompted by concerned calls from a family member who had been unable to reach the elderly couple living there. As they approached the front door, the officers noted the absence of any signs of life. The house seemed untouched by the chaos of the outside world, yet something felt undeniably wrong. After several unanswered knocks, the officers forced their way inside. The air was heavy with an unsettling quiet, the kind that seemed to cling to the walls. In the dining room, a table was set with food, untouched and eerily pristine, as if waiting for a meal that would never be eaten. There were no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture or broken glass. Just an oppressive silence that seemed to grow with each step they took. Their search led them to the kitchen, where the true horror awaited. They hesitated at the door, exchanging uneasy glances. Something seemed wrong. No sound of life stirred beyond the doorway, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator, steady and unnatural in the silence. One of them stepped forward and opened it. What they found inside would follow them for the rest of their lives. In the mid-1960s, Houston, Texas, stood as a symbol of American prosperity and ambition. A city riding the crest of an oil-driven economic boom. Skyscrapers jutted defiantly into the expansive Texas sky, while the echoes of industry reverberated through its bustling streets and burgeoning neighborhoods. Yet, beneath this veneer of progress, there simmered a darker undercurrent of crime and corruption. A shadowy ballet of vice that thrived in the city's back alleys and hidden corridors. Against this backdrop, in the heart of Houston's Montrose neighborhood, there sat a peculiar household, nestled in the modest confines of 1815 Driscoll Street. The Montrose area, known for its middle-class vibrance and eccentric flair, housed an eclectic mix of artists, intellectuals, and families, each contributing to the community's distinctive character. Yet, among them, the Rogers household stood as an anomaly, a fortress of secrecy that intrigued and unnerved the locals. Fred Christopher Rogers, the patriarch of the family, was a figure shrouded in both charisma and controversy. At 81, Fred was a retired bookie and real estate operator whose past was a mosaic of alleged misdeeds. Known for his involvement in illegal gambling and fraud, Fred had navigated the shadows of Houston's underworld with a deft hand, his reputation marred by whispers of abuse and manipulation. His relationship with his son, Charles, was particularly fraught, marked by allegations of emotional and physical maltreatment that cast a long shadow over the Rogers family narrative. Fred's wife, Edwina Ivor Rogers, was a retired real estate agent with her own enigmatic air. At 72, she was a woman of both charm and cunning, whose purported manipulative tendencies were as legendary as her prowess in property deals. Rumors circulated about her involvement in forgery, particularly in relation to her son Charles's name on property deeds, a testament to her willingness to bend moral boundaries. Their son, Charles Frederick Rogers, was an enigma of a different order. At 43, he was a man of extraordinary intellect and reclusiveness, a former seismologist and Navy pilot who had once soared through both academic and literal skies. Charles was a polyglot, fluent in 7 languages, his mind a vault of knowledge that few could fathom. Yet, despite his brilliance, he lived a life of profound isolation, retreating to the confines of his attic room, a self-imposed exile within the walls of his family home. For over 5 years, Charles had not been seen face-to-face by his parents, communicating only through notes slipped under the door, a silent testament to the fractured dynamics of the Rogers household. His decision to leave his job at Shell Oil in 1957 without explanation only added to the air of mystery that surrounded him. His departure from such a prestigious position was as abrupt as it was unexplained, leaving colleagues and acquaintances to speculate on the reasons behind his sudden withdrawal from the professional world. The Rogers residence was a reflection of the family's inward-facing existence, a cloistered domain that offered little in the way of outward engagement. Neighbors seldom caught sight of them, their presence more often inferred than observed. Houston in 1965 was a city of contrasts, where economic prosperity coexisted with a grim tapestry of over 200 homicides that year. The veneer of progress could not entirely mask the reality of a city grappling with the darker aspects of urban life. Crime, corruption, and gambling were not just whispers in the night, but active participants in the city's narrative, threading through its fabric as inexorably as the oil that fueled its boom. In this complex and often unforgiving environment, the Rogers family seemed to exist in a world apart, their lives a tapestry woven from threads of genius and dysfunction, ambition and secrecy. The peculiar dynamics within the walls of 1815 Driscoll Street mirrored the broader dichotomies of the city they called home. A place where brilliance and darkness coexisted in uneasy harmony, each shaping the other in ways both profound and bewildering. As the city of Houston continued its relentless march toward the future, the Rogers family remained a cipher, their secrets locked away in a house that stood like a monument to mystery amid the chaotic swirl of life around it. In this setting, the stage was set for a story as complex and intriguing as the city itself, a tale waiting to unfold in the shadows of a neighborhood that had long since learned to live with the enigmatic presence of its most secretive residents. June 20th, 1965, was a day that forever altered the fabric of the quiet neighborhood. It was Father's Day, a date meant to celebrate paternal bonds, but in one household, it marked an unfathomable tragedy. Within the walls of a seemingly ordinary home, horrors unfolded that would haunt those who stepped inside. Fred Rogers, a man of routine and resilience, met a brutal end on that day. He was found beaten to death, the weapon of choice, a claw hammer, a tool meant for construction, not destruction. The violence did not end there. The killer, driven by a grotesque compulsion, continued with targeted mutilation on the body, carried out post-mortem. Acts so unspeakable they suggested a depth of rage or madness hard to comprehend. Edwina Rogers, Fred's wife, was not spared from this nightmare. She was beaten and executed in the master bathroom, a place where one might expect solace and privacy. But here, it became a scene of cold-blooded murder. Her life was extinguished in an execution-style shooting, a single deliberate act that left no room for mercy. the horror continued to unfold in a methodical display of brutality and calculated concealment. The killer drained the blood from the bodies in the bathroom, a meticulous act that spoke to a chilling level of premeditation. The dismemberment of the bodies followed, transforming the bathroom into a macabre workshop. Limbs and organs were washed with precision, then stacked neatly in the refrigerator, a grotesque parody of domestic order. The heads, symbols of identity and humanity, were placed in the vegetable crisper, an action that defied all understanding. In an effort to obliterate any trace of this ghastly crime, the killer flushed the organs into the sewer, hoping the dark depths of the city's infrastructure would swallow them whole. The house itself was not left untouched. Every surface and corner was scrubbed with bleach, the acrid scent mingling with the air of silence that now filled the home. The meticulous cleaning erased nearly all traces of blood, save for a single, haunting mark. A spot of blood on Charles's bedroom keyhole, a silent witness to the horror that had unfolded. In the dining room, a meal was set on the table, perfectly arranged but untouched. It stood as an eerie testament to normalcy shattered by violence. The table, set for a family gathering, was instead a memorial to the lives that once filled the home with laughter and love. Days passed in silence until June 23rd, when the world outside began to stir with concern. Edwina's nephew, Marvin Martin, troubled by the lack of communication, reached out to the authorities. His concern prompted a welfare check, leading officers to the doorstep of the Rogers residence. With no response from within, the officers were forced to make entry, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. Inside, the house was eerily quiet, a stillness that suggested abandonment. But as the officers made their way to the kitchen, the mask of everyday life slipped away. The refrigerator, a household appliance that symbolized sustenance and preservation, became a vessel of horror. As the door swung open, the grisly scene was revealed. The dismembered remains, stacked with a precision that belied the brutality of their end, confronted the officers, a moment seared into their minds, never to be forgotten. While the bodies of Fred and Edwina were found, one presence was conspicuously absent. Charles Rogers, their son, was nowhere to be found. The house, scrubbed clean and devoid of life, offered no clues to his whereabouts. Charles, a man of mystery even before this grim discovery, vanished without a trace, leaving behind questions that would linger for decades. The neighborhood, once a tapestry of quietude and suburban contentment, became a backdrop to one of the most chilling unsolved cases in the annals of true crime. The events of June 20th, 1965, etched themselves into the consciousness of those who dared to ponder the depths of darkness that could exist within the confines of a family home. As investigators pieced together the timeline from that fateful Father's Day, the story that emerged was one of horror, methodical in its execution, yet enigmatic in its motive. The blood-stained narrative left behind was a testament to the unfathomable depths of human depravity and the chilling silence of unanswered questions. The mystery of what truly happened inside that house on June 20th remains, to this day, a haunting echo of a crime that defied all logic and humanity. The investigation into the chilling case was a meticulous endeavor undertaken by authorities determined to unravel the grim mystery that lay before them. The scene that greeted the detectives was one of unsettling calmness, devoid of any apparent signs of forced entry or robbery. This initial discovery set the tone for an investigation riddled with complexities and meticulous scrutiny. Inside the dimly lit home, amidst the eerie silence of absence, investigators unearthed tools that would become pivotal in understanding the gruesome nature of the crime. A claw hammer and a saw, both stained with traces of malevolence, were recovered. These objects were soon linked to the barbaric acts committed within those walls. Forensic examinations revealed that the dismemberment of the bodies bore the hallmarks of surgical precision, suggesting that the perpetrator possessed a disturbing level of anatomical knowledge. As investigators combed through the crime scene, they noted an unmistakable scent of bleach lingering in the air. The entire area had been meticulously cleaned, an attempt to erase the traces of violence that had occurred. Yet, despite the assiduous efforts to sanitize the scene, a solitary clue evaded the perpetrator's vigilance. Blood was found smeared upon the keyhole of Charles's bedroom door, a silent testament to the horror that had unfolded. The room itself was a paradox. Charles's quarters were locked, pristine, and devoid of any incriminating evidence. It was as if the room existed in a separate realm, untouched by the chaos that had ensued. This peculiarity, coupled with the blood on the keyhole, quickly shifted the focus of the investigation towards Charles. He emerged as the prime suspect, casting a shadow of doubt and suspicion over his otherwise unassuming persona. The authorities, driven by the urgency of the case, launched a nationwide manhunt, leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of Charles. Airports became scrutinized havens of activity, as investigators meticulously sifted through flight records, scrutinizing every departure and arrival. Financial accounts were dissected with precision, yet yielded no signs of movement or activity. Known contacts and acquaintances were interrogated, their lives dissected in search of any morsel of information that could lead to Charles. Yet, despite their relentless efforts, Charles remained an enigma, a ghost in the fabric of their investigation. Years passed, and the case grew cold, the trail of Charles fading into obscurity. Then, in the late 1990s, a glimmer of hope emerged in the form of private investigators Hugh and Martha Gardenier. Their relentless pursuit of the truth breathed new life into the investigation. They delved into the labyrinthine depths of the case, unearthing forgotten leads and piecing together fragments of information. Their research culminated in the publication of their book, The Icebox Murders, in 2003. Within its pages, the Gardeniers proposed a theory that Charles had fled to Honduras, seeking refuge in the anonymity of a foreign land. They surmised that he had lived out his days in obscurity, eventually meeting his end there. However, this theory, compelling as it was, remained shrouded in uncertainty, lacking the concrete evidence required to transform speculation into fact. The investigation, despite its exhaustive efforts, remained unsolved. The tools, the blood, the meticulously cleaned crime scene, all were pieces of a puzzle that refused to be completed. The theories surrounding the mysterious demise of Charles's parents weave a complex tapestry of intrigue and speculation, each narrative thread offering a glimpse into the potential darkness that enveloped this tragic tale. One theory posits that Charles, driven to the brink by years of emotional abuse and financial betrayal, took violent action against his parents. Those who knew the family whispered of the relentless emotional manipulation that Charles endured, a torment compounded by the discovery that his parents had forged property deeds, effectively robbing him of his rightful inheritance. The evidence supporting this theory lies in Charles's reclusive behavior and the meticulous scientific skill required to dismember the bodies, skills he possessed in abundance. However, this theory struggles against the absence of direct evidence. There was no confession, no fingerprints left behind, and no definitive proof of his escape from the scene, leaving the theory as speculative as it is compelling. Another theory suggests that Charles was not driven by revenge, but rather by a sudden break from reality. His extreme isolation and cryptic communication style hinted at a mind teetering on the edge. Friends and colleagues noted his abrupt abandonment of a promising career, a decision that seemed irrational to those around him. Yet, despite these indicators, there was no official diagnosis or documentation to support claims of mental instability. Charles maintained a level of functional intelligence and structure that seemed at odds with the notion of a complete psychological breakdown, creating a paradox that weakens this hypothesis. In a twist that could have been pulled from the pages of a Cold War espionage thriller, some speculate that Charles was entangled in a CIA or JFK conspiracy. With his background in intelligence, it is conceivable that Charles might have been part of a clandestine operation, one that required the ultimate sacrifice to prevent exposure. This theory captures the imagination, but falters under scrutiny due to a lack of tangible evidence. The notion is widely dismissed by credible sources, who argue that the absence of any documentation or corroboration renders it a figment of overactive imaginations. Lastly, an equally compelling theory points the finger at an external killer, suggesting that Fred's dubious dealings in bookmaking or fraud may have led to a deadly retaliation. The criminal underworld is known for its ruthless methods, and there were whispers of police interference that lent credence to this possibility. However, this theory also faces significant challenges. There were no signs of a break-in, and the nature of the killings bore the hallmarks of a deeply personal vendetta, suggesting an inside job rather than an external hit. The methodical execution of the crime seemed to speak of an intimate knowledge of the victims, casting doubt on the involvement of an outside party. Each of these theories, while grounded in elements of truth, ultimately leaves more questions than answers. The darkness surrounding the case remains impenetrable, the true narrative lost to the shadows of time and speculation. The house on Driscoll Street has long since been sold, repainted, and folded back into the quiet rhythm of the Montrose neighborhood. New families have come and gone, the lawn trimmed, the silence re-inhabited by ordinary life. But behind those walls, something lingers, something the passage of time hasn't managed to erase. The case, now decades cold, remains unsolved. No arrests, no trial, no body ever found for the only suspect. The city has changed, but the questions remain untouched by time. And somewhere between the blood, the walls, and the cold hum of that refrigerator, the truth still waits. Waiting perhaps to be found, or to stay hidden forever.